I'm Amanda, 27 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I was my family's universal scapegoat. Every problem, every mishap, somehow circled back to me. Last spring, after years of taking the blame, I finally made the hardest decision of my life. I disappeared from their lives without warning.
No dramatic exit, no explosive confrontation.
I just left. What happened after a month of silence shocked even me. Let me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and stick around to discover how my family's world unraveled when they no longer had me to blame. Growing up in suburban Boston, my childhood looked picture perfect from the outside. Our brick colonial with its white picket fence and perfectly manicured lawn was the envy of the neighborhood. My father Robert worked as a financial advisor, my mother Margaret taught third grade at the local elementary school, and to everyone in our community, we were the ideal American family. My older brother Jason was the star quarterback, my younger sister Kimberly was the gifted dancer, and I was Amanda, the unremarkable middle child. Behind closed doors, our family dynamic told a completely different story. From my earliest memories, I recognized a pattern that would define my entire childhood. When something went wrong, Amanda was to blame. It wasn't subtle or occasional. It was persistent and deliberate. I was 8 when I first clearly remember this happening. My mother had received a crystal vase as an anniversary gift from my father. One afternoon, while I was doing homework at the dining table, I heard a crash from the living room. I ran in to find Kimberly standing frozen beside the shattered vase on the hardwood floor. When our mother came rushing in, Kimberly immediately pointed at me. Amanda pushed me and I bumped into it, she claimed, tears streaming down her face. The fact that I had been in an entirely different room didn't matter. My mother didn't even question the accusation. "Why do you always have to ruin everything?" she had asked me, her voice cold with disappointment. I was sent to my room without dinner, confused and hurt. By 12, I had learned that defending myself was pointless. When $50 went missing from my father's wallet, all eyes turned to me despite the fact that Jason had been desperately short on cash for a date that weekend. I was grounded for 2 weeks. No amount of tears or protests could convince them of my innocence. The family vacation to Florida when I was 15 was particularly telling. We had booked a fishing charter that got canceled due to weather. Somehow, according to my father, it was because I had brought negative energy on the trip. My parents and siblings spent the remainder of the vacation making comments about how I had ruined everything. I spent most of that week alone in the hotel room, reading books and wondering what was wrong with me. Despite the unfair treatment, I desperately tried to win my family's approval. I maintained a perfect GPA, joined the debate team, and eventually became student council president. But my achievements were always minimized. "Amanda only gets good grades because she has no social life," Jason would say at dinner, and my parents would laugh. When I was accepted to all 7 colleges I applied to, including 2 Ivy Leagues, my mother's response was, "It's easier for girls to get in these days. They have quotas to fill." Meanwhile, Jason's C average was celebrated because he was focusing on athletics, and Kimberly's decision to skip college entirely to pursue dance was deemed brave and authentic. It wasn't until my junior year of high school that I began to understand what was happening. My guidance counselor, concerned about my anxiety, recommended therapy.
Dr.
Winters, a kind woman with silver-streaked hair and gentle eyes, was the first person to suggest that I might be what family therapists call the family scapegoat. "It's a common dynamic in dysfunctional families," she explained. "One child is unconsciously selected to carry the blame for the family's problems. It protects the others from having to face their own issues." I rejected the idea initially. "No, my family loves me," I insisted. "They just have high expectations."
Dr.
Winters never pushed, but she did give me books on family dynamics. I read them in secret, recognizing my life on every page. Still, loyalty kept me from fully accepting the truth. These were my parents, my siblings. Surely there was something I could do to fix our relationship. That hope that things could change if I just tried harder, if I just found the right approach, would keep me trapped in this dynamic far longer than I should have been. College offered me my first taste of freedom. I chose NYU, far enough from Boston that weekend visits weren't expected, but close enough that I could return for holidays. Those 4 years gave me room to breathe, to discover who I was outside of my family's perception of me. I thrived academically, made genuine friendships, and began building a life that felt authentically mine. After graduation, I landed a job as a junior marketing specialist at a digital agency in Manhattan. For the first time, my work was appreciated. My ideas were heard. My mistakes weren't magnified into character flaws. My apartment in Brooklyn became my sanctuary, a small, plant-filled space where no one blamed me for anything. But my family remained a constant presence, even from a distance. The phone calls came like clockwork, each one bringing a new crisis that somehow became my responsibility. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because you never call," my mother would say, despite the fact that I called every Sunday without fail. "Kimberly needs to borrow your car for a month," my father announced during one call, not asked, told. When I explained that I needed my car to commute to different client sites, he accused me of being selfish. "Family comes first, Amanda. You've always been self-centered." The financial requests started small. Jason needed $500 to cover rent until his next paycheck. My mother's credit card was maxed out and she needed help with a $1,000 payment. Dad's business was going through a temporary rough patch. Could I loan him $3,000? The money was never returned, and any gentle reminders were met with accusations that I was keeping score and holding grudges. My best friend Taylor was the first to call it what it was. "They're using you," she said bluntly over brunch one Sunday. "And they have you so conditioned that you can't even see it." I defended them instinctively, but the seed of doubt had been planted. It grew stronger when I met Michael at a work conference in Chicago. He was kind, thoughtful, and most shockingly, he valued my opinions. As our relationship developed, he witnessed firsthand how my family treated me. After he attended a family dinner where my parents criticized everything from my career choices to my hairstyle, Michael couldn't stay silent. "You know that's not normal, right?" he asked on the train back to the city. "The way they talk to you, no one deserves that." My family, predictably, disliked Michael immediately. He was changing me, making me difficult and distant. What they meant was that he was helping me develop boundaries. My 25th birthday marked a significant turning point. My family forgot entirely. No calls, no texts, nothing. When I finally called them that evening, my mother acted as if I was being dramatic for even mentioning it. "We've been busy with real problems," she said. "Jason's going through a divorce. Your sister's dance studio is struggling. Not everything revolves around you, Amanda." Later that week, when I mentioned my hurt feelings to my father, he exploded. "This is exactly why we can't tell you anything. You make everything about yourself." The irony was crushing. They had turned their forgetting my birthday into another example of my supposed selfishness. As my awareness grew, the family drama intensified. Every boundary I attempted to set was met with increasing hostility. When I couldn't make it home for a cousin's baby shower because of a major work presentation, my mother told the entire extended family that I thought I was too good for them now. The physical toll became impossible to ignore. I developed insomnia, waking at 3 a.m. with my heart racing. Panic attacks became a regular occurrence. My doctor suggested that stress was a likely culprit and recommended therapy again. Christmas that year nearly broke me. I spent 3 days in my childhood home, walking on eggshells, absorbing blame for everything from the overcooked turkey to the tension between my parents. When I retreated to my old bedroom for a brief moment of peace, my mother followed me upstairs. "You need to try harder," she said, standing in the doorway. "Everyone is miserable because you're bringing such negative energy." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I had never allowed myself to see before. She needed me to be the problem because she couldn't face the real issues in our family. "I am trying," I whispered, but I was beginning to understand that nothing I did would ever be enough. My grandmother's 80th birthday should have been a joyous family celebration. Instead, It became the catalyst for the biggest decision of my life. As the only organized one in the family, according to them, I was tasked with planning the entire event. For 2 months, I juggled my full-time job with creating invitations, coordinating with the venue, ordering the cake, arranging the photographer, and handling all the details my family couldn't be bothered with. Throughout the process, my mother constantly changed requirements and criticized my choices. "No, Amanda, blue decorations would depress your grandmother," she'd say one day, only to call the next insisting, "It has to be blue. It's her favorite color. Don't you pay attention to anything?" Despite the contradictions and last-minute changes, I managed to create a beautiful celebration. The banquet hall looked stunning with elegant floral arrangements and personalized touches reflecting my grandmother's life. For a brief moment before guests arrived, I felt proud of what I'd accomplished. That feeling evaporated quickly. When the cake delivery was delayed by traffic, my mother announced to arriving relatives, Amanda didn't confirm the delivery time properly. When my aunt asked about the seating arrangement, my father interjected. Amanda insisted on doing it her way. We told her it wouldn't work. Each comment stung, but I maintained my composure, focusing on making sure my grandmother enjoyed her day. The final blow came during dinner. The venue staff, short one server due to illness, was running slightly behind. As my mother grew increasingly agitated, she stood up and announced to the entire room, "I knew we shouldn't have trusted Amanda with something this important. She always finds a way to disappoint us." The room fell silent. My grandmother looked uncomfortable. Several relatives averted their eyes in secondhand embarrassment. And something inside me, something that had been bending for years, finally broke. After the party, in my parents' kitchen, the inevitable family postmortem began. "You embarrassed us all," my mother said, aggressively loading the dishwasher with leftover cake containers. Grandma was trying to be nice, but I could tell she was disappointed. "The party was beautiful," I defended quietly. "Everyone had a good time." "Always making excuses," my father muttered. Then Jason, who had contributed nothing to the event, delivered the line that would change everything. "This is why we can't rely on Amanda for anything important. She's been letting this family down her entire life." I looked to my mother, waiting for her to defend me. She said nothing. My father simply nodded in agreement. "You need to be more supportive of this family," my father added, wagging his finger in my face. "Either start pulling your weight or—" He didn't finish the threat. He didn't need to. The 2-hour drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of tears. When I arrived home, instead of falling into bed, I called Michael. Despite the late hour, he answered immediately. "They'll never change," I sobbed, recounting the evening's events. "Nothing I do will ever be good enough." "Then maybe it's time to stop trying," he said gently. That week, I had an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Reed. "What would happen if you took a break from your family?" she asked. "Not forever, necessarily. Just long enough to gain perspective." The question startled me. "I can't just leave them." "Why not?" she challenged. "You're an adult. You're financially independent. You have a support system outside of your family." "They need me," I said automatically. "Do they? Or do they need someone to blame?" That night, I researched family dynamics and scapegoating extensively. I joined online forums where others shared similar experiences. One comment from a woman who had been estranged from her family for 5 years resonated deeply. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting that I wasn't responsible for fixing them. Over the next 2 weeks, I formulated a plan. I updated my address with all important institutions. I changed my phone number, creating a new one that only a select few would have. I set up email filters. I made sure my workplace security knew not to allow unannounced visitors. The decision to leave without confrontation wasn't about avoiding conflict. It was about protecting my mental health. Every previous attempt to discuss our dynamic had been twisted and used against me. A clean break was the only way. The night before I implemented my plan, I wrote a letter. It wasn't angry or accusatory, just honest. "I need space to heal," I wrote. "I love you all, but the current dynamic is hurting me. I'll reach out when I'm ready to reconnect, if that time comes. Please respect my decision. As I sealed the envelope, I realized that for the first time in my life, I was putting my own well-being first, and the guilt I expected to feel was overshadowed by an overwhelming sense of relief. The morning I enacted my plan felt surreal. I'd taken the day off work, citing personal reasons, and spent it methodically severing the digital ties that bound me to my family. I changed my social media settings to private, removed family members as followers, and updated my email filters to automatically archive messages from their addresses. I wouldn't block them entirely. I wanted to preserve the option to review their communications when I felt emotionally ready. But I needed their words contained, unable to ambush me throughout my day. The email I sent was scheduled to deliver at exactly 9 a.m., a time when I knew they'd all be awake. It was essentially the same message as my letter, which would arrive by mail in a day or two, providing both immediate and physical notification of my decision. I didn't want them to worry about my safety, just my boundaries. By noon, I had moved a suitcase of essentials to Taylor's guest room in Queens. My apartment lease had 3 months remaining, but I couldn't risk my family showing up there. Taylor had offered her place as a sanctuary while I figured out next steps. "Stay as long as you need," she said, helping me arrange my things in her spare room. "I'm proud of you for doing this." The first responses arrived within hours. My mother's initial text feigned concern. "Amanda, what's going on? Are you okay? Call me immediately." When I didn't respond, the facade cracked. Her next message revealed her true reaction. "This is extremely immature and selfish behavior. Your father is upset, and it's affecting his blood pressure. I hope you're satisfied." My father's approach was more direct. "Whatever game you're playing needs to stop now. You're acting like a child. Call your mother." Kimberly's message was predictably self-centered. "Great timing, Amanda. Mom and Dad are freaking out, and I'm stuck dealing with it. Why do you always have to create drama?" But it was Jason's response that surprised me. While my parents and sister sent group messages to each other about my mental breakdown and attention-seeking behavior, Jason texted me privately. "I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're okay. Things are intense here. Take the space you need." It wasn't an apology or even an acknowledgement of his role in what had happened, but it lacked the accusatory tone I'd expected. I saved the message, but didn't respond. The physical distance from my family brought immediate bodily relief. The tension headaches that had become my constant companion began to subside. My appetite returned. But emotionally, I was in turmoil. Years of conditioning had taught me that I was responsible for my family's happiness. Their distress, even when manufactured, triggered intense guilt. What if my dad really does have a health crisis because of this? I asked Michael when he came over that evening. "Your father is a grown man responsible for his own health," he reminded me gently. "You are causing his blood pressure issues. His lifestyle choices and stress management are." Taylor was equally supportive, but more blunt. "They're using the same tactics they always have," she pointed out. "Notice how quickly your mom went from 'Are you okay?' to 'You're selfish' when you didn't immediately respond." My first therapy session after leaving was intense. Dr. Reed helped me identify the manipulation tactics in each message I'd received. "Notice the common themes," she said. "They're all about how your actions affect them. There's no curiosity about why you felt you needed to take this step, no reflection on their behavior." The first week without contact was the hardest. I had panic attacks almost daily, waking up gasping for breath, convinced I had made a terrible mistake. Years of psychological conditioning don't disappear overnight. Part of me still believed I was the problem. I developed a self-care routine to ground myself. Morning journaling, afternoon walks in Prospect Park, evening calls with Michael. I focused on small tasks at work, gradually rebuilding my concentration. I allowed myself to feel the grief because that's what it was, grief for the family I had always wished for but never had. By the end of the first week, I noticed small moments of joy creeping in. I laughed spontaneously at a colleague's joke. I felt genuine excitement about a new project at work. I slept through the night without nightmares. "You look different," Michael commented during our dinner date that weekend. Lighter somehow. I realized he was right. The constant weight of anticipated blame had been lifted. For the first time in my life, I was experiencing what it felt like to simply exist without being responsible for everyone else's feelings. I think I'm starting to feel normal, I told him, the concept so foreign it was difficult to articulate. The journey was far from over, but those first days of separation had shown me something crucial. The family dynamic I had been trapped in wasn't inevitable. There was another way to live. The second week of separation revealed much about my family's true dynamics. According to a mutual family friend who reached out to check on me, my parents initially dismissed my absence with casual confidence. "Amanda's just going through a phase," my mother reportedly said at their weekly bridge game. "She's always been dramatic. She'll be back when she needs money or help." Their certainty that I would return was telling. They genuinely believed I couldn't function independently of them, despite evidence to the contrary. I had been financially self-sufficient since college graduation, never missing a rent payment or asking them for money. In fact, the financial flow had always been in the opposite direction. By day 10, when I hadn't responded to any messages, their approach shifted. The frequency of texts and calls to my old number increased dramatically. Emails flooded my archive folder with escalating subject lines. "Please read" became "Urgent family matter" became "Your father is not well." I read them at scheduled times, with Michael or Taylor present for emotional support. The contents followed a predictable pattern: guilt, anger, minimization, and ultimately threats. "If you don't respond by tomorrow, we'll be forced to file a missing persons report," my mother wrote, ignoring the fact that I had explicitly stated I was taking space and was not, by definition, missing. When digital methods failed to produce a response, they moved to more public forums. My mother posted vague, concerning updates on social media, praying for our daughter during this difficult time. Mental health is so important. The calculated ambiguity painted me as unstable while positioning her as the concerned, supportive parent. Extended family members began reaching out. Aunts, uncles, cousins I rarely spoke with suddenly sending messages expressing concern. It became clear my parents were mobilizing the entire family to pressure me into contact. Not everyone participated in this campaign. My Aunt Rachel, my father's sister, sent a message that stood out from the others. "Amanda, I don't know exactly what happened, but I want you to know I support your right to set boundaries. Your mother called me very upset, but something didn't sit right with her version of events. Take the time you need. I'm here if you want to talk." Her message brought me to tears. It was the first time any family member had acknowledged my perspective might be valid. The escalation continued when my parents showed up at my workplace the following Monday. Fortunately, I had anticipated this possibility and informed security and my manager about my family situation. When they arrived asking for me, they were politely but firmly told I wasn't available. Michael happened to be picking me up for lunch that day and encountered them in the lobby. According to his account, my father became confrontational, demanding to know where I was staying. "Amanda has been very clear about needing space," Michael told them. "I think the best thing you can do is respect that." "You've poisoned her against us," my mother accused. "She was never like this before you came along." Security eventually asked them to leave, but the incident shook me. They had escalated to showing up at my workplace, a clear violation of the boundary I had set. What would they try next? The smear campaign intensified in my absence. Friends from high school messaged to ask if I was okay, having heard concerning things from my mother. Former neighbors reached out with similar worries. My family was systematically contacting anyone who had ever known me, sharing their narrative that I was unstable, ungrateful, and under negative influence. Some people believed them. My childhood friend Stephanie sent a disappointed message about how I should appreciate my family more. My former piano teacher expressed concern that I was making poor choices. These losses hurt, but they also revealed who had only known the surface-level version of my life. But for every person who accepted my family's version, there was someone who saw through it. My college roommate Jessica responded to my mother's outreach with skepticism and immediately contacted me, Your mom just called me sounding super concerned, but something feels off. Are you actually okay? Or is she the one I should be worried about? Oddly enough, as the campaign against me intensified, cracks began to show in my family's unified front. Through the family grapevine, I learned that my brother Jason had begun questioning our parents' approach. Maybe we should just give her the space she asked for, he reportedly suggested during a family strategy session, only to be shut down by my mother. 3 weeks into my absence, financial issues began emerging in my family. My sister called my old number in tears, leaving a voicemail about how she couldn't make rent because Mom and Dad said they can't help this month. It was the first concrete indication that my financial support had been more significant than I'd realized. The most manipulative attempt came in the form of a late-night call from my father to Michael. How he got his number, I still don't know. Amanda's mother is in the hospital, he said, his voice grave. She needs to come home now. Michael, alarmed, asked for details. Which hospital? What had happened? After some pressing, my father admitted she had gone to urgent care for a migraine and been sent home with medication. She wasn't hospitalized at all. When Michael relayed this conversation, I felt a strange mixture of hurt and validation. The lengths they would go to manipulate me were extraordinary, but their tactics were becoming increasingly transparent. Each attempt reinforced that I had made the right decision in creating distance. By the end of the 3rd week, the tone of messages began to shift. My mother's social media posts took on a martyred quality. Sometimes, as parents, all we can do is pray our children find their way back to us. My father's emails became shorter, less demanding. My sister, facing financial reality without my support, began sending tentative messages about working things out. They were finally beginning to understand that this time was different. This time, I wasn't coming back just because they wanted me to. The 1-month mark arrived with a surprising sense of calm. I had moved from Taylor's guest room into a month-to-month studio apartment, creating a temporary home that felt secure. My panic attacks had subsided. I was sleeping through the night regularly. Colleagues commented on my increased focus and confidence at work. Whatever you're doing differently, keep it up, my manager said after I successfully presented a campaign proposal to our biggest client. I've never seen you this assertive. The distance from family drama had allowed me to channel my energy into my career, resulting in a promotion to senior marketing specialist, a recognition that would have been diminished or dismissed entirely by my family. My relationship with Michael had deepened through the crisis. He had been unfailingly supportive without trying to control my decisions. I'm here whatever you choose, he had said repeatedly, and I believed him. For the first time, I was experiencing what a healthy, balanced relationship felt like. On exactly the 30th day of my separation from my family, an email arrived from an address I didn't immediately recognize. The subject line read simply, "It's Jason.
Can we talk?"
My brother had created a new email account to contact me. Unlike the manipulative messages from my parents, his was straightforward. Amanda, I've been doing a lot of thinking since you left. I'm starting to see things differently. Some of what you said in your letter made me look at how we've all treated you over the years. I'm not proud of my part in it. If you're willing, I'd like to meet and talk. Just me. No mom and dad, no Kimberly. Your terms, your location. If you're not ready, I understand. I read the message multiple times, searching for the hidden manipulation, the guilt trip, the blame. I couldn't find it. I shared it with Dr. Reed in our next session. What do you want to do? She asked. I think I want to hear what he has to say, I admitted. But I'm scared it's a trap. We discussed safety measures, public location, limited time commitment, someone knowing my whereabouts. After careful consideration, I responded to Jason, suggesting coffee at a cafe near my workplace the following Saturday. His reply was immediate and respectful. Thank you. I'll be there. The meeting was awkward initially. Jason looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervousness I wasn't accustomed to seeing in my usually confident brother. Thank you for meeting me, he began. I wasn't sure you would. I wasn't sure either, I admitted. After some hesitant small talk, Jason took a deep breath. I owe you an apology, Amanda. A big one. The things I said at Grandma's birthday party, and really, for years before that. I was wrong. The directness surprised me. What changed? I asked. You left, he said simply, and everything fell apart in ways I didn't expect. What followed was a revelation I hadn't anticipated. According to Jason, my absence had exposed financial dependencies I hadn't fully realized existed. My parents had been using my regular loans to cover gaps in their budget for years. My father's business had been struggling longer than anyone acknowledged. My sister's dance studio had been operating at a loss since opening. They kept it from you because they knew you'd try to help them develop a real solution, Jason explained. It was easier to just keep taking your money and blaming you for other problems. I felt a complex wave of emotions, validation that I hadn't imagined, the exploitation, anger at the deception, and strangely, relief that there was a concrete explanation for some of the dysfunction. How did you figure all this out? I asked. When you left, they turned to me to fill the financial gap, he said. I couldn't, not to the extent you had been. That led to some heated arguments where a lot of truths came out. Jason described his own journey of realization over the past month. How he had started seeing a therapist himself. How he had begun recognizing patterns from our childhood that he'd been complicit in perpetuating. I'm not saying I understand everything you've been through, he said. But I'm starting to see how unfair it was. We talked for nearly 3 hours. Jason revealed how our parents' marriage had deteriorated rapidly in my absence, their unified front crumbling without a common target for blame. How my sister Kimberly had suddenly become interested in reconciliation when she realized the financial implications of my departure. She's been calling me daily asking if I've heard from you, he said. I think she needs help with studio rent. Toward the end of our conversation, Jason suggested something unexpected. Would you consider meeting with all of us? With a professional mediator or therapist present, he quickly added. Not at their house, somewhere neutral. The question triggered an immediate anxiety response. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I said honestly. That's completely fair, he replied, surprising me again with his understanding. It was just a thought. Whatever you decide about future contact, I'd like to work on our relationship if you're open to it. As we parted ways, I felt oddly empowered. For the first time in our relationship, I was setting the terms of engagement. The power dynamic had shifted, not because I was trying to control Jason, but because I was finally controlling my own boundaries. Over the next week, I carefully considered my options. I discussed them with Michael, with Taylor, with Dr. Reed. I journaled extensively, trying to identify what I truly wanted versus what conditioned guilt was pushing me toward. I realized that while I wasn't ready to fully re-enter my family system, I was curious about the changes Jason had described. With Dr. Reed's guidance, I formulated conditions under which I would consider a family meeting. 1. It would be conducted with a family therapist present. 2. It would take place in the therapist's office. 3. I could bring Michael for support. 4. I could leave at any point without justification. 5. If anyone violated respect boundaries, the meeting would end immediately. These weren't punitive measures. They were the protections I needed to feel safe engaging with a system that had caused me significant trauma. I communicated these terms to Jason, who responded supportively. I'll present this to them, he said. For what it's worth, I think these are reasonable boundaries. As I waited to hear whether my family would agree to these conditions, I reflected on how profoundly my life had changed in just 1 month. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed. I had built a support network of chosen family, Michael, Taylor, colleagues who valued me. I had learned that I could survive, even thrive, outside the toxic dynamic I had been trapped in for 27 years. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing with certainty. I would never again be the family scapegoat. That role was permanently vacant. The family therapy session was scheduled for a Wednesday evening at Dr. Lorna Matthews' office in Midtown Manhattan. I arrived early with Michael, my heart racing despite weeks of preparation with Dr. Reed. The waiting room, with its neutral tones and gentle lighting, seemed too serene for the emotional confrontation I anticipated. Jason arrived next, giving me a supportive nod. Then my parents entered, my mother's eyes immediately searching my face for signs of capitulation. My father looked older somehow, the stress of recent months evident in his posture. Kimberly came last, clearly uncomfortable, checking her phone repeatedly as if hoping for an escape. Dr. Matthews welcomed us and established ground rules. Everyone would have uninterrupted time to speak. Respectful language was required. Anyone could request a timeout. I could leave at any point without explanation. My mother spoke first, her initial words surprisingly vulnerable. "We've missed you, Amanda," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "The family doesn't feel right without you." But as she continued, the familiar patterns emerged. "I don't understand why you needed to cut us off completely. We're your family. We've always been there for you." Dr. Matthews gently redirected. "Margaret, try focusing on your feelings rather than questioning Amanda's choices." My mother struggled visibly with this correction. "I feel abandoned after everything we've done for you." "Mom," Jason interrupted, breaking protocol. "Remember what we discussed?" She paused, then tried again. "I'm sad and confused. I thought we were close." When my turn came, I spoke from a heart, describing specific incidents where I'd been blamed unfairly, how the pattern had affected my self-worth, my health, my ability to trust others. I explained that my decision to leave hadn't been impulsive, but the culmination of years of pain. "I didn't leave to hurt you," I concluded. "I left to stop hurting myself." My father struggled to engage meaningfully. When asked to reflect on his role, he defaulted to defensiveness. "Parents make mistakes," he said dismissively. "No family is perfect. Amanda has always been sensitive." Dr. Matthews challenged him gently. "Robert, can you acknowledge the specific experiences Amanda has shared without qualifying them?" He couldn't or wouldn't. After several attempts, he resorted to silence, arms crossed. The most revealing moment came when Kimberly spoke. Initially, she expressed regret for any part she might have played in my pain, a non-apology that carefully avoided responsibility. But when Dr. Matthews asked what she hoped to gain from reconciliation, her answer was tellingly honest. "I need help with the studio," she admitted. "The rent increased, and I can't cover it alone." The naked transactionalism of her response hung in the air. No one spoke for several seconds. Jason's contribution was the most evolved. He acknowledged specific instances where he had participated in scapegoating me, offered a genuine apology, and expressed commitment to changing the dynamic going forward. "I can't change our parents," he said, looking directly at me. "But I can change how I interact with them and with you." By the end of the 90-minute session, several things had become clear. My mother had some capacity for reflection, though limited by her own unaddressed trauma. My father was currently unable to take meaningful responsibility. My sister viewed relationships primarily through a lens of utility. And Jason was genuinely working to grow. Based on that assessment, I made my decision about future contact. I would maintain regular, boundaried communication with Jason. I would consider occasional, structured interaction with my mother, contingent on her continued work in therapy. I would maintain distance from my father and sister until they demonstrated meaningful change. "I'm not cutting anyone off permanently," I explained as the session concluded. "But I am being selective about who has access to me and under what circumstances." The months that followed brought significant changes. Michael proposed during a weekend trip to the Berkshires, presenting a vintage emerald ring that had belonged to his grandmother. When I called Jason to share the news, he was genuinely happy for me. My mother's response was mixed, pleasure at my happiness tempered by concern about wedding planning without her central involvement. My father and sister didn't respond to the announcement at all. I found a new apartment in Brooklyn Heights, a fresh start symbolically and practically. As I unpacked my belongings, I realized how few mementos I had from my childhood home. As if subconsciously, I had been preparing to leave for years. The healing process wasn't linear. There were days when grief overwhelmed me, not for the family I had left, but for the family I had never had. Dr. Reed helped me understand that this grief was necessary and healthy. You're mourning the childhood you deserved but didn't receive, she explained. That's a legitimate loss. I reconnected with Aunt Rachel, who had reached out consistently during my absence. Over lunch in a small Italian restaurant, she shared her own observations of our family dynamic. Your mother was scapegoated in her family too, she revealed. She never addressed it, just passed it down to you. This information didn't excuse my mother's behavior, but it helped me contextualize it. The pattern was intergenerational, and I had been the first to break it. Perhaps the most significant change was internal. The constant anxiety that had been my companion since childhood gradually subsided. I no longer braced for blame with every phone call or interaction. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. I began to trust my own perceptions without requiring external validation. I also found purpose in my experience by joining a support group for adult children from dysfunctional families. Sharing my story helped others recognize their own family dynamics, while hearing their experiences reinforced that I wasn't alone. I wasn't defective. I had been trapped in a toxic system, and I had found the courage to leave. 6 months after that first therapy session, I had coffee with Jason, now a regular occurrence. He seemed lighter, more authentic than I'd ever seen him. You know what I realized recently? He said. You leaving was the healthiest thing that could have happened to this family. It forced us all to look at patterns we'd been avoiding for decades. Not everyone had done that work, of course. My father still maintained that I had overreacted to normal family stress. My sister still reached out primarily when she needed something. But their inability to change was no longer my responsibility to manage. I had learned perhaps the most important lesson of my life. Sometimes walking away isn't abandonment. It's the strongest act of self-preservation possible. Forgiveness didn't require reconciliation. I could release my anger without resuming harmful relationships. I could love my family from a distance while loving myself up close. As I finish sharing the story, I want to ask, have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you find the strength to maintain them? I'd love to hear experiences in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Remember that family isn't just about blood, it's about who treats you with love and respect. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you find the courage to write your own ending, whatever that looks like for you.